First thing first, who is a narrator? Simple. He's the disembodied voice that guides you, the player, throughout the game, and he's the one who presents to you a goal that hinges on every decision that you make. Slaying the princess. Hey, that's the title. But why? What's the reason? Well, according to the narrator, he says that the princess is responsible for the supposed world to soon come to an end. Thus, she was locked behind a cabin in the middle of the woods. But to his desire, he doesn't just want the princess locked away. He wants her gone, permanently. And as such, he places that responsibility onto you, the player, to carry. That seems like a straightforward answer, even to some. But if you ask him about any proof or evidence of that fact, he quickly dismisses the question and instead reinforces what he told you. From here on out, as you proceed towards your destination, that's when things don't seem to add up. For one thing, upon seeing the princess, her beauty strikes you like a dagger, almost as if you fall for her. Even the hero, another voice similar to the narrator, comments on this saying,
"She's so coldly beautiful. Is she really a threat to the world?"
And secondly, this isn't the typical princess you thought she would be. For every decision you make that pertains to whether or not you save or kill her, she will react to them accordingly. Like, literally, she would. Either A, she shows you affection upon you rescuing her, B, she reveals how capable she can be when you try to kill her,
Get him up, let him get up, let him get up, let him get up.
or in the worst case scenario, you become that damsel. It doesn't help that when you try to ask her about the whole adding the word bit, she gives you vague responses that don't necessarily make her innocent. This is not to mention the other weird things that happen throughout the game, such as the cabin's interior design changing to your previous decisions when you die. Yes, you heard me, you will die in your first chapter, and by proxy, you are being greeted by multiple voices similar to the narrator and the hero. Look, in a nutshell, all of this depends on which path you choose to take, and if you just realize that the game essentially did the mini world's interpretation storyline, then congratulations, you deserve a cookie. But what about the narrator, you ask? What does he have to do with any of this? Well, he hates all of it, or at the very least, he gets really annoyed by it. For a disembodied voice, he's surprisingly a control freak, desperately wanting you to simply terminate the princess without asking questions. And as you keep playing the game, you start to catch on that he can do a lot more than just narrating. He can interact with tangible things, like for instance locking the door, dropping the pristine blade next to you, and control your body like a puppet if you ever go off the deep end and do more than just disobeying him. He also sets up fail saves in case you ever died, so that he can quote unquote restart and do what he asks of you to do. Basically, it means that all of those different branches you explore after you die are all created by him.
Hi, just gonna interject, he never created those paths. That was my mistake. I assumed that he did, but then after going back and playing the game again, making some more research, and overall looking to the Princess wiki, it turns out he did not create those. He did not create them. They already existed long before he showed up. So, yeah, my fault. Let's get back to the video.
Ironically though, he actually doesn't remember any of the previous paths, only able to piece it all together later on through witnesses and deductive reasoning. In some of the different paths you can take, for instance the Spectre and the Nightmare, you get hints that he's possibly the reason why the princess is stuck in the basement and therefore cannot leave. And yet, there are a few things that he cannot control. For one, you the player and the princess, despite being struck in this predicament that neither you can escape from, still have full autonomy over your decisions. Some more than others. Here's one example. Upon fulfilling the requirements needed to activate the Spectre path, the narrator congratulates you with a gift. A view of what the world looks like when the princess is struck down. And it's nothing. It's nothing. To the narrator, it's peace and eternal happiness. To you, it'll be boring and underwhelming. As such, another voice that accompanies you for almost all the game agrees with you and therefore proposes to you an option, ending it all. At the behest of the narrator, you go through with it only to wake up in the Spectre path, where everything in the cabin is completely different from before, along with the princess who despite looking different, can still react and touch you, the player. She can even kill you off if you refuse to cooperate with her, which leads you to the most scariest path ever.
Cute.
Anyway, why am I telling you all this? It's simple really, to reinforce what I said earlier. Only you and the princess make any drastic changes to the surrounding environment, even though the narrator is the one who is seemingly in more control. And clearly, there's legit nothing that'll satisfy the narrator. If you deviate from the goal, everything changes and he won't be satisfied. If you don't, everything changes and he won't be satisfied. All this to say, he has no control over anything, or at the very least, he's steadily losing control. And his goal that he wants to desperately achieve only escapes his grasp further and further. And by the way, there's another external stuff that's happening outside the confines of the cabin. The mirror. For some reason, the narrator can't see it and only you can interact with it. And even though it shows up here and there throughout the game, it especially shows up after the princesses in each path is taken by a cluster of hands. Strangely, whenever you interact with the mirror, it slowly but surely starts to reveal everything bit by bit, starting with you, who grows and changes from each interaction you have with said mirror, up until the end when you meet up with a familiar voice. And from there, everything clicks. Who is the narrator? Simple. He used to be a living thing with likes and dislikes, a living thing with aspirations and flaws, a living thing that may have had people he held dear close to his heart and cherished a lot. But then one day, a tragedy occurred. He experienced death in the form of everyone perishing steadily before his eyes. All the people he would see on the daily, the animals that would roam free, the trees and the flowers, everything that could breathe like him all perished. At the sight of it all, it became a fear. But it was a fear that he wanted to eradicate once and for all. The princess in reality is called the Shifting Mound, a goddess who is not the goddess of death, but death is part of her, as she is an ever-changing being. A being who was united with their partner called the Long Quiet. A god who turns out to be you, the player.
Dear God.
And that's not all.
Wait, what?
The two of you omnipotent gods were actually created by the narrator in his own death, in an attempt to make the concept of life and death a tangible thing, only to rip you two apart. And thus, in pursuing his goal, he molded the Shifting Mound into the princess, trapping her in the cabin. Then, using the last of his might, he made you from the Long Quiet to play the role of a hero who shall smite the supposed villain, the princess, and leaving behind echoes of himself to every path that you take, making sure that you succeed in accomplishing that goal as he slowly and steadily passes on. All is revealed to you by whatever is left of the narrator, as each question you ask breaks the mirror shards whenever it responds, further ending the narrator's life. And all that happens after you interacted with the mirror for the last time, and subsequently accomplishing the Shifting Mound's goal, which is to reunite with the other different iterations of the princess you managed to find, or what they call perspectives. In other words, the Shifting Mound's want of becoming whole again practically undoes all of the efforts the narrator had made, in part thanks to you, the player. But then, what happens? What is the conclusion to all of this? Well, as corny and repetitive as it sounds, it all depends on you. Despite this big revelation, the whole motif remains the same. You have full reign to choose and act on what you want to do, something that the game full-heartedly encourages you to do. I have played this game about 3 times now, and I've gotta be honest, it was a thrilling ride. Who would have thought that a point-and-click game that has multiple paths can lead me towards love, hype, and genuine good scares? Well, I certainly didn't. But do you know who doesn't get that luxury? It is the narrator. Unfortunately for him, the moment he sought to defeat death, his fate was sealed. His life hanging on by a thread, desperately wanted his goal to be achieved, and based on my playthrough of the game, I don't think he's ever gonna get it. Oof. Well, not yet anyway. I haven't gotten all the endings, so there's that.